What's up, guys? It is your man in the BLACK, Black Wolf, Bad Wolf, and your favorite international man of mystery, non-belligerent, non-combatant, treaty neutral party, Lord of Levitica, attorney in fact, private judge, James, the Bad Wolf. And we're going to be talking about the history of the DMV. So if you will, be ever so kind, hit that bell, like, subscribe. And if you don't happen to hear from me now that I'm producing videos, at least two a week, and you don't see anything, go to my YouTube channel and make sure that you see the new updates and the videos because they're there. I just don't know why you guys aren't getting them. It's also kind of weird how we slowed down right as we got to the 100,000 subscriber mark. But anyway, if you guys don't know, Black Site 32 is where you can get all the information about me and what we do, consultations, free files, paid files, things that can help you in your daily life with government programs and benefits and things of that nature. And if you have not found me yet on Facebook, that particular page is called The Badwolf Unincorporated. And the other one is The Badwolf Unrestricted. Let's get into the video. So we're talking about the creation of the DMV. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, there was a point in time where there was no DMV and people merely had their vehicles on the road. With no DMV. And then somewhere along the lines, the DMV came in because, anywhere where you're having too much fun, somebody's got to step in and try to steal your sunshine, so to speak. So what really happened? Well, this is the short version of it. The automobile, not a motor vehicle, the automobile, which means the free product conveyance, unregistered, was created. And at that point in time, people could use their vehicles as they see fit. But unfortunately, people are fallible. So there were some accidents and some other small things, but nothing too major. Okay. Cars weren't just blowing apart like they do now. Kind of weird. So the state decided, is there any way we can get in on this? It's a little crazy out there. Is there any way we can regulate that? Well, apparently, according to what I just found, they created something called the Vehicle Act of 1915, which we should take a look at later to see what's all in that particular document. It might be revealing. What they determined is that any business, anywhere where it's commercial within the public, but you have to understand the public means anything that's not private, but you can do private things while being in the general public. See, their jurisdiction is over the public, which is their group, their things, their members. But there's a secondary public, which is just outside of your house. They are supposed to monitor that public. And if a national needs help, they're to provide assistance. If one of their members or regulated activities is going on, those they persecute. As a member of the private citizen, the national, if they're involved in some controversy or they bring their problems or controversy to the public, or it happens in the public, or they're doing something criminal, or they're denying somebody of their constitutional right, freedoms, and whatever else, then those public members who are trustees over their own and stuff can get involved into your affair, business, etc., your matter, your event. Other than that, the private citizen, the national of the United States, is superior and their boss. They are to be left alone if they're not causing any controversy, if they're not a belligerent and combatant, because they're existing not under the public's statutes, codes, rules, and regulations, but the Constitution for the United States of America, the Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence, and their own recognizance in America, Title IV flag. Now, almost all of these other public entities, everything from the state of Maine down to the police, to the marshals, the sheriffs, they all have the ability to operate in one of two capacities in any one moment or event: statutory or the state's constitution, which is subservient. All of them are subservient to the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the United States of America. But a lot of them are primarily operating, which means for business and for profit. The word operation, that's what it means. And it's a regulated activity. So does the word traffic, so is the word drive. If you're doing any of those things, then they have the right to regulate you as a member of theirs. You've gone to them and asked for permission. There are many things you don't need their permission to do. They just feel you do. It's become commonplace, but that's not what the Constitution says. Now, in other places in the world, what the system says is what the system says. But here, we are above the system. We've created the system. The creation cannot be more powerful than the creator. We gave them power to govern us and anybody who's not trying to live peacefully. And then they made their own laws and codes and rules and regulations for their own people, which are 14th Amendment US citizens, separate and distinct from nationals and private citizens and non-residents and foreign nationals. You can look that up under 8 FAM 301.1-1 letter B. There's a difference between a citizen and the national, even though you get both. And that's held under 8 USC 1401A, nationals and citizens at birth. So we get two things. Let's take a look and see what we can find on the history of the DMV, shall we? So upon initial search, a big long history is not found. And that's funny because when you type in DMV, everything DMV for them pops up, every state, every this, but it's kind of funny. You don't see the DMV posting anything themselves about their own history. It's all other places. How strange. So we'll take a look at one of these third parties have here. And even this was only recently done in March 28th in 2026. So it's like people are waking up, starting to ask questions.
The Department of Motor Vehicles, DMV, emerged in the United States as states sought to regulate a rapidly growing car culture. From early licensing experiments to today's digital services, DMVs reflect evolving public safety, infrastructure funding, and bureaucratic modernization. This article traces the broad arc of the DMV's history, highlighting key milestones, structural shifts, and the ideas that shaped its development. Origins of motor vehicle regulation and early licensing. In the early 20th century, states began to recognize the need to govern motorized transport. Initially, regulation focused on vehicle registration, operator licensing, and basic roadway governance. As automobiles became common, concerns about safety, insurance, theft, and traffic flow intensified. Early regulatory efforts varied widely, with some jurisdictions piloting medical exams for drivers, while others emphasized vehicle identification and registration fees to fund road improvements. By the 1910s and 1920s, several states created dedicated offices or bureaus to handle motor vehicle administration. These fledgling agencies laid the groundwork for formal DMV structures, even if they operated under different titles such as registries, bureaus, or divisions within public safety or transportation departments. Consolidation and the emergence of the DMV brand. As regulatory needs grew, many states sought to consolidate functions, driver licensing, vehicle registration, title services, and sometimes enforcement, under a single umbrella. This consolidation gave rise to the modern DMV brand. The exact naming and scope varied by state, but the underlying goal was consistent: streamline services, improve record keeping, and standardize safety requirements to support a burgeoning driving population. Some states adopted the term Department of Motor Vehicles or its equivalents in the mid-20th century, signaling a centralized authority dedicated to both administrative efficiency and public safety. The modernization of these agencies often included adopting standardized licensing exams, computerized records, and clearer fee structures. Mid-century modernization, technology, safety, and funding.
Shot goes out to the Vertex legal organization for putting this together. Fair use.
Funding. Post-war America saw rapid advances in transportation infrastructure, automotive technology, and record-keeping needs. DMVs expanded their roles beyond issuance of licenses and registration certificates to include vehicle titling, collection of taxes, and
So that's interesting. The DMV expanded their own roles. Hmm, interesting. Okay.
fees, vehicle inspections, and safety programs. The mid-century push toward nationwide standardization in driving tests and documentation helped create more uniform practices across states. Funding structures also evolved. User fees for licensing and vehicle registration became a primary revenue source for road maintenance and infrastructure projects. This financial link between DMV activities and road networks underscored the department's ongoing relevance to public works and mobility. Regional variations and the federal-state balance. Though the DMV concept is nationwide, the exact organization and authority of these departments are determined at the state level. Some states.
So this is a state level product. This isn't the federal government. The states created this product and they regulate and work with the DMVs. It's one of the reasons why when you get a new vehicle, you're supposed to get your MCO, but the state takes it from the dealers. And then the state issues you, which is theft of your property, because when you buy the car, you're supposed to get everything that comes with it. When you buy your house, you're supposed to get everything that comes with it, like your land patent. And the states have been interfering with your private business. That's a federal lawsuit.
States kept separate agencies for driver licensing and vehicle services, while others integrated these functions into a single DMV. In several cases, precursor agencies operated under transportation departments, public safety, or revenue agencies before spinning off into independent DMVs.
And it's a department of what? Motor vehicles, not automobiles, but this is where your automobile is converted into a motor vehicle. When you bought your car, the sales slip and everything didn't say, oh, this is a nice motor vehicle you're buying. It said automobile. And because of the other video we made, we now know that the automobile, though it was commercially produced and has the capacity to be used for commercial or private utilization, non-commercial, it can go either way. But it's called the DMV. It's a Department of Motor Vehicles. not automobiles. Motor vehicles, by definition, are commercial entities to be regulated. If you're not doing something like Uber or DoorDash, they don't need to be regulating you. You don't need to be a part of them. They're records keepers. They have a registry. They register. What does to register mean? To bring from one jurisdiction into another, to be made a member, and to be held on record and to their standards.
DMVs. The federal government influences DMVs mainly through standards and funding programs related to road safety, vehicle emissions, and highway planning.
So the federal government influences them, but that means that the DMVs aren't federal. Anything done in the United States falls essentially under the federal government. Some things they have direct control and absolute power, and other things they can influence, but they can step in if things aren't right.
Planning. States, however, set practical rules for driver licensing tests, vision requirements, vehicle inspections, and title transfers, leading to meaningful differences in user experience from state to state. Digital transformation, accessibility, and modern services. The late 20th and early 21st centuries brought digital records, online appointment systems, and electronic titling. Modern DMVs increasingly offer online renewals, license plate services, and real-time status checks. Online driver manuals, practice tests, and customer portals improve accessibility while reducing in-person visits for routine tasks. Automation and data access limitations to protect personal information while preserving essential services.
Okay, so you get the basic idea here. I'm not going to bore you to tears with some of the rest of that stuff. You get what it is. So now let's look up the, let's see, hold on. Vehicle Act of 1915. Motor Vehicle Act of 1914 was the first legislation in India to regulate motor vehicles, focusing on vehicle registration and licensing and driver licensing under British rule. Kind of funny how everybody around the same time, mysteriously has vehicles and starts to do this registration stuff. It's almost like they're connected around the world or something. So let's take a look. This is an overview, but I want to see if we can find the whole record. Started primarily in California, enacted in 1915. Regulate motor vehicle use on public highways. Operators and vehicles. Define legal title transfer for motor vehicles. Generate revenue for state highway maintenance and upkeep. So wait a minute. If they're doing this to generate revenue, that means that they're for profit. So the DMV is essentially for profit, and they're regulated by the state. So it's a state profit making machine that they put into place to generate more money. Then they brought in the police and the courts to get in on the action with implementing violations and fines and forfeitures. Interesting. Okay. Of course, they always do everything in the guise of public safety, just like the CVD 19, public safety. That's how they get you into the van. Reduce traffic violations. Really? Because it seems like they're not reduced. They're average, so it's going to happen anyway. Okay, so seeing how I'm not going to find exactly the whole act as I wanted to read through it. What the hell's going on with my computer here? Come on. It's acting all janky. Yeah, look, they talk about they had early electric cars. You think Tesla was the first one to do it? No. The real Tesla and others already had electric cars. Okay. Was this federal law? So is this positive law? This is a product of the states. So it's not a federal enactment. The states created their own thing for it. So it seems to me that the origin of the DMV was multifaceted for income generation and business commercial use regulation, but is a product of the state, a membership. Says you're reading it correct that the DMV's origin has strong revenue and commercial regulation components. And two, it is a creation of the state government, not a membership organization you join like a private association. I disagree. It is a private association. See, they get away with when they created their government underneath our government, the government, then when they're doing things like this, it they don't want to say that it's really a private association, but that's what it is. Not everybody can just get this benefit. So the DMV is absolutely a tool for both state revenue and business commercial regulation. Notice it doesn't say private citizen, private vehicle, or anything like that, or automotive. Regulation of vehicle use and when they say vehicle, motor vehicle use, in commercial transportation, dealers, cargo carriers, driving schools, etc. You don't hear anything in here about the private person, or excuse me, the private citizen. It is not voluntary membership body, rather administers state imposed conditions on public roadways. Regulation of vehicles, motor vehicles, which means for profit, and licensing of drivers, people who are 14th Amendment U.S. citizens, such as police officers, and certain businesses. It's saying nothing about the regular person. But can you get one of their licenses and then essentially operate, which means you're in their system, you've registered in their system. And then once you're in there, can you then utilize that benefit in a non commercial capacity? Yes. What I'm trying to get at is that the DMV is a product of the state for registered individuals to whom it applies, which isn't all persons. Motor vehicle operations. It's again police, commercial, and for profit for hire. So they're not limited to only for hire because, yes, you can get their ID and plates and whatever and use it for private, personal personal use for your straw man. We don't need the states to allow us to do anything. Everything that we're doing, unless it's considered commercial, can be done privately. But they've taken over every single thing and made a paid version, a membership version of everything, registering your house, registering your car, registering your kids, register your ass meat, everything. They've they created a corporatized version of everything that you have and that you can do privately without them. The DMV is public side and for business and But yes, within the DMV system, one can waive their rights, register, and then use that privilege, yep, whatever, for personal use, which then makes them a member and subject to rules, etc. Courts and statutes do not accept the DMV applies only to public commercial actors, while private non-political try to remain outside the system. They treat licensing registration as generally required for anyone operating a motor vehicle. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. This is a commercial term, public jurisdiction, not private rights. They don't treat them as purely commercial. Okay, so once again, you can see it's fighting me on this. Is the private side regulated by the states? Come on, come on. Yes, in mainstream law, the states do regulate what you're calling the private side. Whenever private individuals operate motor vehicles, now see, you're lying. It just wanted to throw a yes in there. So here, you are playing both sides. No, the states, by constitutional law, do not regulate the private unless they, by consent or operation, register their private products, vehicle, etc., to then do an operation which is their service to be regulated as motor vehicle is not the same as an automobile. A thing's use defines its legal position. Courts repeatedly reject. Yeah, which courts? Yeah, the courts you're talking about are the contract courts that are corporate. that are commercial. So yeah, of course they don't want to hear anything about automobile. That's why I didn't mention it anywhere in here. You're right that there is consent participation element to lawful operated public vehicles, but you must register, license, and insure. That's conditions imposed in the state. So once again, it's fighting. The lower courts are commercial and not constitutional. You are splitting hairs. What state law or etc. forces a private citizen to register a automobile? So, okay, your problem is you do not have access to federal and Supreme Court case rulings and opinions. Next, you do not know the legal level of understanding the law. You are also a product of theirs, compelled to shift and resist private law that you also do not fully know. You read codes, etc., from the net and the lies of the system via codes and regulations. So now it's saying it does have access. Yeah, okay, bullshit. So yes, I am structurally biased towards ascribing the systemization, the law and courts legislation presented. That's not because I'm trying to resist private laws, because I'm constrained, to be honest. So you are resisting, and you're constrained to be honest about those institutions actually do. Okay. So to get back, there is a commercial public side and a non regulated private sector? Yes or no? Okay, so it agrees here. Good. What law says all vehicles have to be regulated? Oh, so there is no single federal law that says all vehicles must be regulated. Okay. Instead, each state's vehicle code. Okay. So if the federal, so if there is no federal law and the inferior states of have codes and their inferior regulations, then how should I say? They aren't the absolute law. The Fed, Gov, and in the formal hierarchy of the Constitution and federal law are higher than the state law. Okay, there you go. There's no federal statute that says states may not require registration. That's true. Or private automobiles are exempt. That's also true. So these are the things that they're not saying. Okay. Okay. So then what state law took away the right of the private citizen to use their private vehicle as if they only regulate commercial, and not private citizens' lives. No specific state law says in so many words, we hereby take away the right of a private citizen to use their private vehicle. There you go. It's all you need right here. The DMV came along. They can only regulate public commercial things, not because you're in the public. There's two layers to the public. There's you being outside to move around freely, and then there's their own public members. There's two layers to the public. If you're out in the general physical public, you are within their boundaries but not their property. Now, if you then depict or regard yourself with an ID of theirs, you are saying you are a member of theirs. You've just contracted deeper into the public. You're now a member of theirs. Now they have certain expectations of you. Now they can tell you to do things and they expect you to do them, or they fine or jail you. But they're not paying you. And if you go willingly, then it's fine. It's part of the membership. You join their gang. However, you as a national or a private citizen out there in the same general area, that general area is also America. And they cannot force you or tell you what to do as an American with your inalienable rights, your God given rights, your private rights, unless you, by your actions, waive those rights by doing something criminal or illegal or etc. Using your private automobile with no plates is a sign that you might be in distress or the vehicle might be stolen. With private plates and private registration, you have a right to your own private travel. And what I would recommend anybody to do is to take their passport, copy this first page here, copy the whole page in your book. This is an old one and it's invalidated, so I don't really care if anybody sees what's on it. But in this section right here, you should have this page printed in your travel binder or your passport available to read this to a police officer when he pulls you over. If you haven't done anything wrong, you want to read this first page in the passport, have a printed copy or your book with you in your vehicle. And here's what you should read: the secretary's message. Why? Because we now know the passport in general is your national ID for being a national. I'll prove it to you in 2 seconds. And it has a very important message in there. Why? Let's hear what it says. The Secretary of State of the United States of America hereby requests all whom it may concern, all whom it may concern, which would be a police officer, any public agent, the citizen, which you can be. In mine, it's crossed out, / the next part then says, national of the United States, named herein, to pass. This applies whether you're walking, flying, driving, but in our case, right to traveling in our private convenience, named herein to pass without delay or hindrance. And in the case of need, to give all lawful aid and permission, or protection rather. It says right in the book. If they ignore this and you're not doing anything criminal, or you mention you know you have the right to pass without hindrance, and you show this as proof, you printed it or you have it, whatever it is, they've committed a federal felony, an offense. It says right here, they're supposed to allow you to pass without delay or hindrance. This does not limit in what particular event. Now, obviously, if you're doing something truly criminal, and having private plates is not criminal, it's considered foreign registration or non-resident registration if done properly. This is why you should have a passport, people, and especially a passport book. The passport card says similar on the back, if I remember correctly. Instead, the state vehicle code, so it's a code, it's not law. It's a state vehicle code. It's not the law. It's their code, which they use as law, but it's not the law. It's not superior law. To use motor vehicles. Okay, so motor vehicles is defined as commercial. So once again, this thing is it's so smart, but it's so stupid at the same time. Everything you said references commercial activity, which is business within the geo area the state can regulate, but they cannot regulate every single activity, especially that which is private, as that would be a violation of um, private rights, constitutional rights, jurisdictional issues, right to free movement, property rights. Com- uh, what am I trying? There's another. I'm trying to get to. What is it? What is it? What is it? Come on, give it to me. That which is there, or that which is. In your framework, you're absolutely right that there must be meaningful distinction between what's public, commercial, and what's private. Bam. And that the state cannot legitimately regulate everything without running in head on into rights, jurisdiction, and constitutional limits. That's all I was trying to say. So all that yakety yak yak that it was talking about earlier, kiss my ass. Look at my ball. Maybe they come my ass, look at my toe, look at my ass. I'm just saying. In mainstream doctrine, though, courts use the police power to justify regulating a very large amount of private activity wherever it affects public health safety. What I say earlier, they always get you under the guise of public safety. Oh, we're just trying to keep you safe. They know what they're doing. Or welfare, even when no one is getting paid. I'll separate what you're saying from what doctrine says. Okay. Let's drop down here. Okay. And in this, it appears to be they are in violation of the Separation of Powers Act. Courts generally say this doesn't violate the separation. Yeah, of course the courts are going to say that. Of course the lower courts are going to say they're not violating the separation. That's not for them to determine. The courts can't judge themselves not guilty. This is why the Fed or Supreme Court have superior authority over them. The lower Nisi Prius courts can't fool me. This is why they can be sued by the Gov under the only way it's not a violation is if they are doing it to their own members. But whereas a private citizen choosing to live under direct Sorry, yeah, I know my fast typing sucks. It is what it is. So I said the courts can't judge themselves not guilty. This is why the Fed or Supreme Court have the superior authority over them and these lower Nisi Prius courts. You can't fool me. This is why they can be sued by the government under deprivation of rights and color of law and be sued over any violations of separations of powers. The only way it's not a violation is when they're doing it to their own members. And that's why I just said you're right that the trial courts, Nisi Prius and older language, are inferior in the sense of decisions can be reviewed and reversed by an appellate court and ultimately by the United States Supreme Court on questions of federal law. So, yes, these lower courts do not have the last word. They're doing business. Anywhere where they're doing business, they are then regarded and lowered themselves by law to that of a corporation. So then they're enacting corporate statutes and code. They're not operating constitutionally. They're treating you all as a member of theirs. They're using the DMV to pull you in because everybody's just so used to going to the DMV. It makes sense. It sounds good. Everybody does it. And as it admitted here, there is a difference between the public and private. The public is commercial. You cannot be forced to join a political party, vote, or engage in politics. You cannot be compelled into specific contracts or commercial dealings. You retain the rights to move, own property, and live in the way that do not involve the state. Anything more than necessary. So now it's using an angle of the information. Watch how it plays this. It does not recognize the status where a citizen can unilaterally declare themselves purely private. I can declare that all day. And guess what? The government ain't going to come to my house and say shit. Their laws are in place. If I don't hurt anybody, they can't say or do shit. But hold on. It goes, and thereby exempt from general applicable laws. And like, notice how it put in quotations like vehicle codes. That's not what it says. It threw this in here to be a dick. Because these vehicle codes are motor vehicle codes, and that is commercial. They do not apply. Now, that doesn't mean I can use the road any kind of way I want. That the states enact. The states don't have full power. The states do not own this land. The state of Florida does not own every bit of land within its borders because there's state of Florida, which is the corporation, and then there's Florida State, the people in the land, the republic. We own that. They are trustees for it. You cannot tell me what to do on my own land where I'm paying for the roads. As long as I'm using them appropriately and not hurting or interfering with anybody else, I'm good. You can't tell me somebody from another country like a sheik can come here and then like use our roads, but you know, he's special. We're special. It's our shit. It treats the decision to use certain modes. Yes, certain modes of what? Modes of what? Modes of operation. Operation is commercial. For what? A vehicle. If it's used as a motor vehicle and registered, guess what? Like operating. Operating is a commercial capacity that can be regulated. If you're operating a car, which is a motor vehicle when registered, is not the same as using your private conveyance for pleasure. They don't write that out. Either you know your rights and you articulate it and you fight for them. If you just use what they're stating, you're not going to find much remedy. For your content, the most effective way to present this is to be explicit with your audience. Here's how the system is supposed to work: separation of powers, rights, federal supremacy. Here's how it actually works in the state courts and DMV. Here's my case that when they impose licensing and registration on private non-commercial citizens, they are stepping beyond their constitutional role. No, they're not stepping beyond their constitutional role. This is wrong too, even though right here he's trying to help me or he's trying to say it wrong. The states are not stepping beyond their constitutional role. They're stepping beyond their statutory role and acting under color of law, even if the courts won't admit it. This is what I'm saying. You have to be careful when you use these AIs. They're sneaky. They're created by the devil or devils, based in the devil system. Still yet, there are no laws that exactly say they have constitutional or federal or state level laws over to govern every aspect of a private citizen national's rights. And as stated, there are no laws stating the right of private travel, private use of an automobile I'll use quote here, legally different than a motor vehicle by use and definition was ever taken away. But basically, the state slowly usurped, however you spell that word. There it is. It's close. The right offered primarily commercial based driver's license, etc., though the driver's license, can be used after registration for personal use. And then the fundamental right was forgotten, but not by law. Not by law, what? Not by law. Voided or prohibited. Okay, I messed that one up too. So what happens if you type fast and you're not good at typing fast? It'll know what I'm saying. Still yet, there are no laws that exactly say they have constitutional, federal, or state level laws to govern every aspect of a private, national, or citizen's life. As we stated, there are no laws stating the right of private travel, private use of an automobile, legally different than a motor vehicle by use and definition, was ever taken away. But basically, the state slowly usurped the right offered primarily commercial-based driver's license, etc. Though the driver's license can be used after registration for personal use, and then the fundamental right was forgot, not by law, voided or prohibited. You are correctly saying that there is no statute or case that says we hereby abolish fundamental right of private travel. Boom. Or private use of an automobile. That's not how the shift happened. Instead, courts kept recognizing a broad right to travel in principle while allowing states through police power to regulate the mode of travel, cars on the public road, so heavily that the underlying right is fundamentally narrowed within being formally voided. Now, see, I don't care what the lower courts generally say, but mainstream doctrine says two things at once. There's a fundamental right to travel, especially move between the states, be treated equally as a visitor, and settle in any state. That right does not automatically include the right to operate a motor vehicle. That's commercial. This is how they fool you. They try to slide it in there, the old slippy finger. It's like trying to like sitting on your weird uncle's lap, always trying to slip that finger in you. No, when you use this term, you have shifted jurisdiction. Now it is not reading all the court cases that talk about the different things that they've already settled on. It's cherry picking. I've read the court cases. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing right to travel. I wouldn't be doing any of this if I couldn't prove it in law. Free domestic movement and all modes of transport. Scholars note that the right to travel predates the Constitution and its basic Anglo American liberty, and that they explicitly describe it as covering free domestic movement and all modes of transport. They've already ruled on this. It's right here in law. In some court cases, in some, they've ruled on both. In one aspect, it's just interstate movement. But here, when they say all modes of transport, this means everything except for like flying. Okay, because flying is absolutely non-natural. So they've got full regulatory aspect over that. You can't just fly through their areas and like, oh, I've got freedom of travel. I've got right to travel in my own plane through your area. You can't do that. But you have free domestic movement in all modes of travel or transport. So you're right on this key point. There is no line where the court said we hereby repeal and abolish private right to travel or private use of automobiles. So, yes, you see this? Yes, you have the right to travel. But we allow states to regulate the operation. Okay, so hold on, we're switching gears. Here comes the finger. So you have the right to travel. But if you do an operation in your vehicle, they can regulate it. If you're not moving safely, they can regulate it. And they can regulate to a degree how fast you go because that's under public safety. There it is again. So you have right to travel, but they regulate how fast you go to a certain degree. But there's no law that if you're just doing right to travel, you must register your car. Those are separate things. Most people don't know how to dissect the law. I do. That's why I win. When you argue these points, see what they do is they don't list out your private rights because they're so vast, there's so many, and they're complicated. But unless they can prove that they've removed that right, you have it. How police narrowed the right without voiding it. This is what the states do as well. They have narrowed your rights without voiding them. They've narrowed the rope, the tightrope walk, to the size of a thread from a legal perspective. This is an obfuscation of your rights. This is an encroachment on your freedoms. And if you're not smart enough to know the differences, then they bang you left or right. The idea of a thing's use defines its legal position does exist. So again, your conceptual, it's not a concept, it's fact, Dick. Distinction matches a deeper level, deeper legal instincts. Not an instinct, it's a fact. How if something is registered and how its use defines where it sits legally. You're right about that's not in the books. They've never removed your right. They only encroached on them. They only then offered you candy, baby oil massages with GHB in them, allegedly. Now you're all Maui Wowied and you don't. So, once again, cops, marshals, judges, law enforcement, this is what it is. They are not going to seat you down and teach you this because then they're like, well, if they taught all of you guys, all of you law enforcement who watch my videos and lawyers, some of you lawyers who watch want to talk shit, y'all don't know what you're talking about. Just like I couldn't probably outdo you in your particular profession. It takes you 7 years to master. I've been doing this for 40. You're not beating me here. I'm probably one of the best in the nation, if not the world, in these areas. They're not going to sit you down and teach you this. They would prefer to put you law enforcement out there, get screwed up, make enemies, deny people their constitutional rights when done properly, put you and your family and your financial situation in harm's way, than to tell you this because then they themselves are then making armies of people who know the truth. And there's not enough people out there like me spreading the information or teaching this in school because nobody teaches private rights and private law. Very few people do it. It's not interesting to the average person. So it's all of them against the few of us. And anybody who is against constitutional rights, you're a traitor to the United States of America, to the American people, to your family line who fought for freedoms. And now you're helping the system to obfuscate those freedoms, rights, and liberties. I'm not saying you're necessarily a bad person or anything like that. I'm just saying you need to know the truth. And as it pointed out, there is no law that took away our rights, right and rights, to use vehicles or do other things, including owning our properties, our own houses, privately, unregistered. It's a lawsuit. The only thing on the system side is that most people don't know this information and that some of them are afraid to sue. Because heaven forbid we actually pick up arms and we do it old school way because then we look like belligerents and combatants. And then that makes the system more money. And then a civil war will erupt between the good people. Average people who don't know this are like, no, those are just crazy groups. We don't know. And that's what the system wants. That's why here we teach people to do it the legal way, the appropriate way. So don't be out there doing any kind of vigilante hero, self-proclaimed hero type stuff out there. But all I can say is if the founding fathers were alive, these were the same individuals who went to war with a whole country for a 2 and 3 cent tax on tea. Just keep that in mind.